Okay, so let's take a look at this worksheet and this activity, exercise B. Complete the clarifying questions. There are only 5 questions and you can see the answers here, so it's pretty easy. So I want you to go ahead and enter the question words here, and then just for practice, I want you to make a complete sentence answer. So let's do number 1 together. So for example, you went where? And the answer is to the jewelry store. But let's make a complete sentence because this is just a phrase. It's a short answer. So we can say, I went to the jewelry store. So it's pretty simple. You can just use the subject and verb from the clarifying question. Okay, so just take a few moments to do this. You can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so let's look at number 2. The answer is my sister, so we can ask, you went with who? And then we can answer, I went with my sister. Okay, so you went with who? And then number 3, you returned what? Okay, and you can see that the answer is watches, so we can say, I returned watches, or you can even add some watches. So I returned some watches. And then number 4, you returned how many? Okay, and then you can answer, I returned 2. And then finally, number 5, they refunded how much? They gave me $134. And then this one is already a complete sentence, so you don't have to change it. But you can say they refunded me $134. Okay, and actually, if you look at number 5, it doesn't include the indirect object. So you could say they refunded you how much instead of just they refunded how much. And actually that's a little more common anyway, to say they refunded you how much. Okay, so we are going to look at another worksheet here. This is actually a review of lesson A. So if you remember, we talked about, or we listened to a conversation of Rosa returning a camera because she didn't really like it and she thought the screen was too small. So I mentioned also in our last lesson that you will probably experience a situation of having to return something or exchange something. So let's take a look at this exercise, and we can see a picture of John and Elaine. So it looks like Elaine is a customer service representative, and it looks like this store is Nemo's Electronics, and we can see that on the bag of the customer behind John. So let's read the situation. You are John. 2 weeks ago, you bought a DVD player at Nemo's Electronics. When you brought it home and started using it, you realized that you didn't like it because it's not easy to use. You have brought it back to the store. You don't want to exchange it. You just want a refund. The DVD player is still in perfect condition, and you still have the box and warranty card. Okay, so we can see that John is at Nemo's Electronics, and we can be a little more specific, and we can say John is at the customer service desk at Nemo's Electronics. And why is he there? We can say he is there to get a refund, or we can say he is there to return a DVD player. Okay, now if you look here in exercise C, it says, what will you say to the customer service clerk? Okay, and I mentioned this in the first lesson, but clerk is fine, it's completely fine, but we really don't hear that word very often anymore. It's more likely that you'll hear customer service associate or agent, or sometimes you might even just hear the man at the customer service desk. So the word clerk is not as used these days. So anyway, Let's practice making sentences that John might ask or tell the customer service representative, Elaine. And this is really good practice because, as I mentioned, this is a situation that you are very likely to experience at some point in the future if you haven't already. So take some time to make 4 sentences, and you can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so you might say, or John might say, I bought this DVD player here 2 weeks ago. Okay, so that's probably the first thing that he would say. So again, I bought this DVD player here 2 weeks ago. Or you can start with this, of course. You can say, 2 weeks ago, I bought this DVD player here. So actually, let me write that down just to make it easier. Okay, so again, your wording might be a little different, but more or less it should be something like this. Okay, and sometimes you can add from. So I brought this DVD player from here 2 weeks ago, but it's not necessary. And then you might also say, when I started using it, I realized I didn't like it because it's not easy to use. So you can just use the information that you can see here and of course personalize it, like make it as though you are John. Okay, and even this phrase is not necessary. You can just say, when I started using it, I didn't like it. Oops, because it's not easy to use. Okay, and then you can also say, I would like, because you want to be polite, so you don't want to say, I don't want to exchange it, I just want a refund. That would be a little impolite. So you could say, I would like a refund, please. Oops. Or you could also say, I would like, can't type today. I would like to get a refund. Oops. Oh, wow. Please. Okay. And if you want to mention that you don't want an exchange, you could say, you could add, I'm not interested in an exchange. Okay, so this is something you could say. Here, actually, let me put this in one line. That might be easier. Okay. Okay. Thank you for being patient with me. Oh, it's still not long enough. There we go. Okay, so I would like a refund, please. Or I would, ooh, I forgot to include the like. Okay. All right, sorry about all the mistakes. And it doesn't fit anyway. Okay. So let me actually put this at the bottom. That way you know that you can include this if you want to add it after saying that you would like a refund. You know, you could also say, I'm going to change it to I'd like to return it, please. Okay, so these are all polite. And then at the end, you could say, it's still in perfect condition. Okay, and I still have the box and warranty card. Okay, so these are things that John might say based on this paragraph. Now, I want you to consider what Elaine might have asked him. So that's actually here. Okay, so let's look at the paragraph. It says, you are Elaine, a customer service clerk at Nemo's Electronics. You help customers who are not happy with merchandise they have purchased. You know the store policy for returns and exchanges. To get a refund, customers must return merchandise within 1 week. After that, they can exchange the item or receive a store credit. The merchandise must be in perfect condition. Today, a customer wants to return a DVD player. Okay, so let's quickly look at the questions. So where does Elaine work? And obviously, she works at Nemo's Electronics. Okay, and what is her job? We can say she is a customer service clerk. She's a customer service clerk. Okay, so just like you did for John, consider 4 questions that, or statements that Elaine might tell or ask John. Okay, so pause the video and continue when you are ready. Okay, so of course, the first question that any customer service representative asks is, how may I help you? You don't have to include that here though, because that's a very obvious question, but I can put that here at the top. Okay, and keep in mind that formal English and informal English can be a little different. So even though how may I help you is the proper way to ask, most people say, how can I help you? Okay, so how can I help you? And then John will, explain his situation and what he wants. But she might first ask him, do you have your receipt? Okay, so that's probably one of the most common questions that a customer service representative would ask if a customer wants a refund. Okay, and then we know that John probably has his receipt. Actually, let's check. Let's just double check. Let's see. Oh, well, doesn't say, but we do know that John bought the DVD player 2 weeks ago. So, unfortunately, to get a refund, customers must return merchandise within 1 week, but he is back after 2 weeks. So, she may tell him that, unfortunately, you have to, or you must, or you need to. But remember I mentioned before that must is usually in writing only. We don't really say you must very often. We usually use you have to, or you need to. So you have to return merchandise within 1 week to get a refund. Okay. So she might say unfortunately, or probably a very common phrase would be I'm so sorry, but, or you can say I'm sorry. Let's do this. Okay. So you can say that, or here, that's kind of confusing, so let's do this. Okay. I'm sorry, but you have to return merchandise within 1 week to get a refund. And of course, John's probably not going to be very happy, but she can tell him right away, you can still get store credit, okay, for your purchase, and this is optional, but I hear this pretty often, so I'm including it here. Okay, and then let's see. Okay, we can still get store. Oh, actually, we can also include you can get or you can exchange the item or get store credit. Okay, so this is also a very common way to use the word exchange. We don't really say get an exchange. We say you can exchange the item. And that actually reminds me that when we use refund, we don't really use it as a verb. We usually say get a refund. We don't say I I want to refund this. Okay, so I think I mentioned that in a previous lesson, but we can say I want to return this, but we do not say I want to refund this. Okay, but for exchange, we can say I want to exchange this. So you can use exchange as a verb, but we don't really use refund in the same way. We use it as a noun. Okay, let's see. I just realized that I forgot to ask one very important question as well. When you return something, the employees usually ask you, is there anything, oops, it's not typing. Is there anything wrong with the item? Okay, or in this case, she might say, is there anything wrong with the DVD player? And this question is probably going to be asked earlier, so it might be question number 2. So do you have your receipt? And John might say, here it is. And then she might ask, is there anything wrong with the item? In fact, this might actually be the first question she asks before, do you have your receipt? So if John comes in and she asks, how may I help you? Then he might say, I'd like to return this item. And she might ask, is there anything wrong with it? And then, of course, he would say, no, but I don't like it because it's not easy to use. And then she would ask, do you have your receipt? And then she would check the date and tell him, I'm sorry, but you have to return merchandise within 1 week to get a refund. So let me see if I can move this question actually. It's not letting me. Hold on. Maybe I can move it this way. Nope, it's not letting me. So anyway, as I mentioned, this question, you can put it here above, do you have your receipt, right here. Okay. But that is the end of our lesson, actually. So it's also the end of Unit 7. So we are going to begin Unit 8 next time. Okay, see you then.